Welcome on back to Up North at 4, and your eyes don't deceive you. He's back, folks.
He's back.
Friend of the program, John Bates, is making his return to Up North at 4. Thank you so much for joining us. And this is a very, very timely interview, I would say. It's the first day of spring. The equinox is pretty
in about
soon.
17 minutes.
We're getting close to it.
Yep.
So, John, is this your favorite time of year? I got to ask you that.
Well, yes and no, because it's supposed to be spring, but it's really not spring.
I know, it's kind of a bummer, right? When you go outside and it's 32 degrees, it's supposed to be 40, and it's like, oh man, I get it.
It's the ultimate tease.
Yeah.
Yes.
But nature is starting to respond, right? Where they know things that we don't yet, and they're starting to be on the move. Is that true?
That's true. Ordinarily, by equinox, we would have, at least where I live, and you certainly down here, you should have robins, you should have red-winged blackbirds, certainly have geese already. I drove over the Wisconsin River, you have trumpeter swans, you have a number of waterfowl back. So birds are returning where there is some open water for them to return. So things are moving, but still a little slow.
What has returned so far that you've noticed?
Up by me, darn near nothing.
Okay.
He lives further north. There's lots more snow up there.
Yeah. Because again, I keep track of all this stuff.
Right.
So I have averages over a number of decades. And for robins, for instance, the average is March 24th. For red-winged blackbirds, it's March 21st. For geese, it's March 15th. So ordinarily, we would have them. But we still have 3 feet of snow on the ground. There's a lot of snow. Yeah. But on the south-facing slopes, we are starting to get a lot of dry soil actually appearing, which is great. We've got some tree sparrows and white-throated sparrows that stayed with us for the winter, a little psychologically impaired, I think, but they remained the winter, and now they're ground feeders, so I'm sure they're thrilled.
They're like, oh, this is great.
We got some ground. Wow.
Yeah, there's lots of bird watchers, of course, across the Northwoods.
Yes.
Don't despair; they're coming. But there's a difference, right? There's climate and there's weather.
Absolutely.
And so, in climatology would suggest they're on the move. They're coming this way. They should be here by now. But they also know when they come up across a big snowbank, maybe I should hold south for a little bit longer. Is that do they know these things?
Well, they may not know when they take off, but as they approach, they may put the brakes on and then return. So we have 2 types of migrants. We have complete migrants that go down just to the southern part of the state or well into the southern part of the country, and they'll come back based on weather. So if the weather's looking good, they'll come back, and they may be here early, may be here late. But we have neotropical migrants. About 58% of our nesting birds in Wisconsin go all the way to Mexico, South America. They're still drinking pina coladas. They're still having a good time down there.
They're not watching me yet. They're waiting.
And they'll come back based on daylight, triggering hormones in them saying time to go, because they can't watch your weather forecast and know. They just come starting the first week of May. They'll take off and come this way. And usually right around May 15th, all those neotropicals, the warblers and so forth, vireos, show up pretty much on schedule, because that's what the hormones are telling them to do. So they're not paying attention to the weather as much. Though if they have a big north wind blowing them in their face, they can't fly against that. So they'll have to wait that out.
You mentioned this a little bit, and I'm kind of curious about it. You mentioned, all right, if they're making their way back north, they come across some snow and they realize, maybe I should hold off on this here.
Yeah.
Do they turn back around, or they just say, we're just going to hold tight for now in wherever that may be and just wait this out? How does that work out?
Well, like geese, for instance, are known to turn back on occasion. So, yeah, if you're coming into a blowing snowstorm, you will probably turn around.
Throw it in reverse. We're going back.
Hey, honey, let's go back. Yeah.
But if there's, it just depends on the species,
Depends on the species.
Okay.
So we hear about loons coming back, and they're migrating, and they hit a cold front and it just whaps them, and they have to come down. They'll start icing up, literally like a plane does, and they'll come down. They'll land on our roads and in agricultural fields. I'm sure you've reported on those in the past. They don't seem to know to turn around. It's dependent on the species.
We're right where we are, and we're not going anywhere. All right, there's a lot to talk about, John.
Okay.
A lot of things that we want to discuss. We're going to take a break on North at 4, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Up North at 4. Joining us, John Bates, good friend of the program, naturalist, author, you name it. You kind of are the king of many hats.
Chief BSer.
There we go, too. Hey, you said it, not me, John, all right? But, John, we mentioned this in the last break. You're up near the border, and you're kind of joking with us a little bit, saying us fellows down here in Rhinelander, we got it easy when it comes to the weather, even though it's below freezing
and the
today.
snow depth is 2.5 feet, and it's 33 degrees. We have it easy.
That's nothing compared to what you're seeing,
No,
right?
nothing, yeah.
Why is that, though? I mean, we're, what, an hour away? But there's still such a huge difference.
There really is a big difference. And so let's just talk about how spring advances, because it's kind of a cool concept. There's a guy named Andrew Hopkins who, back in the early 1900s, put forth the Hopkins bioclimatic law, which he said that for every 15 minutes of latitude, spring advances 1 day. To boil that down, not to do all the math, spring advances, therefore, 17 miles per day northward, okay? Huh. So where I live is basically 55 to 60 miles away from you guys, so we're 3.5 days or so behind you. So if your tulip that's blooming now will be 3 days later or 4 days later for us. If you think about Madison, you guys are 200 miles away from Madison, so that's about 12 days. Dividing by 17 miles a day, that's about 12 days. So the same tulip down there is 12 days later here. The other thing you have to add in, though, the caveat in there, is that elevation matters too. So for every 100 feet gain of elevation, you also have to add a day. So Madison's about almost 900 feet in elevation, and you're at 1550.
1,500, right?
1,500, so you got to add another 6 days for you. So you were at 12, you got to add 6 days. You're 18 days later than Madison. We're 21 to 22 days later than Madison. And if you look at Chicago, and you just put in the elevation, put in the distance, and you can kind of guess. And it works, interesting enough. It was like 1910 the guy did this, but some recent studies have shown this holds true on average,
relatively accurate,
unless we have big rain events or have some extreme cold or something that's out of the ordinary.
So seemingly a small amount of real estate makes a huge difference.
It does.
Like, we don't think of going to Manitowish Waters as that far away, but I mean, it can be, your spring is 3 days behind our spring. That's so cool.
Yeah. And when we do Christmas bird counts, that's when Audubon's been doing this Christmas bird count forever. And so I organized the count in Manitowish Waters, and there's a count here in Rhinelander and so forth, and there's counts in Madison and so forth. Madison will have, over Christmas, 90 to 95 bird species that they'll count. We're incredibly lucky to get 25. So that 200
miles,
200 plus miles for a bird is huge. Think of the snow level we have here compared to Madison. Madison gets some snow, but it melts real fast, so they can have all the ground feeders will hang out. They have robins that spend the whole winter in Madison. They now have sandhill cranes that are spending the whole winter. Part of that's climate change, but it's just real. And then if you drive south on 51, you just watch the vegetation change. Once you hit Stevens Point, you're starting to get into oaks. As you move a little further south, you're getting out of the pine country.
And you touched on it earlier, most migration is tied to the amount of daylight, just like the trees are tied to that as well. And then also this time of year for us right now, our snowpack is still very deep. And there's layers of ice in there. So there's lots of birds, for example, who can't get through that snow to find food. Is that a problem that they're aware of? Like they take that into consideration, I guess.
Absolutely. If you're an owl and you have to dive into a snowpack in order to get to a rodent, a vole or a mouse or something, and you hit an ice layer.
An iceberg,
it's an Excedrin headache moment. And so we often in March have starving barred owls in particular, and people often will call me or email me, or I'll hear about barred owls coming to people's feeders. They're a deeper woods bird, but now they'll be coming out to feeders because they're not eating small birds, but there's usually rodents eating that seed underneath the feeder. And that's where they can get to something, because people have been shoveling the snow out from underneath their feeder for other birds to get there. So it's a starvation time for a lot of critters. March is a really hard month. End of winter, everybody's starving basically. Who has had to remain here or who didn't hibernate or migrate. Yeah.
So we got more to talk about, John. And we're going to take another break. You mind sticking around for a little bit?
That's great.
All right, we'll be right back on Up North at 4.
We'll talk about it if you want.
Cool.
Here, welcome on back to Up North at 4. We're joined by John Bates. And John, we were just having a chat here during the commercial break a little bit. Obviously, you love bird watching. I know a lot of people, a lot of viewers love bird watching as well. We're a little behind schedule this year compared to years past, but what are you most excited about as spring slowly makes its way north?
Boy, Well, everything.
Fair enough.
I mean, I love May. May is when all the flowers are coming into bloom. We have this 3 or 4 week period when the birds are just coming gangbusters. The flowers, you know, they're brief, and they have to get their flowering done before all the shade comes down. So they, you know, so they're ephemeral. So they only have a 2 week period. So May is my top month of the year, from May 7 to May 21 is, and then the mosquitoes come out.
Yeah,
Life
then
gets
that part
worse.
happens.
But that period is just so exciting for me.
But you were saying earlier too, like some birds have like a social status, right? And they come in like full swing,
Yeah.
find their mate and go. You know?
Well, they need to come in and get their territory established. So red-winged blackbirds, the males come in 3 weeks ahead of the females. And so they're establishing the territories. They're buying the house, right?
Gotcha.
Getting
How would
everything.
they know this? Like, it's just, you know what I mean? Okay,
Interesting.
And so the way they establish a territory, rather than having to duke it out with, you know, and risk injury, they've learned that color can denote status. So in human society, we have military people who have stars and stripes and bars and so forth on their shoulders. And we have police that can flash a badge and say, I'm an authority.
This is my status,
This is my status. Birds do the same thing with color. And in the case of red-winged blackbirds, they can cover their color up or expose it depending upon what they want to have happen. Most birds can't do that because the color is there, and you can't do anything with it. But they have these shoulder epaulets that they can, if they want to keep them covered, then it says, hey, I just want to get along, just want to hang with you guys.
Just want to be
everybody's cool, you know. But if I want to establish a territory, and that's my mate, and you guys are out of here, I'm going to flash these epaulets, and he who has the brightest and boldest epaulet wins the territory. And so they've done a really cool study where they captured some of these territorial males. They dyed a little bit of their epaulets black, so they reduced the size, put them back on the territory, and a half hour later, other birds come in and throw them out.
No kidding.
Because they no longer have the biggest and boldest epaulet. So birds have established over eons to use color to avoid conflict and to denote social status.
Interesting. We do the same
cool.
with Jeff, by the way. Right, so we throw him in front of a green screen. It's like, this guy knows weather. You know?
Blue suits, you know, tan
Then,
suits.
then we know he's on.
Tie his hair a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. Spikes it a
I
little.
gotta get the gray out once in a while.
All right, John. We are just blazing through time here. We're going to take another break.
Okay.
And we're going to end the show. And then if you got anything else you want to say, we can do that. Sound good for you?
Sure.
We'll be right back on Up North at 4. Welcome on back. So it's officially spring. We
It's now
passed
spring.
it 3 minutes ago. So now spring is
Happy
here.
spring, John.
Happy spring, John.
Take off, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Take
Take
off
off a layer. All right, it's here. And you were saying as well, it sounds like it's slowly but surely coming with the wildlife coming our way, right?
Yeah, so we were talking about loons during the break, and since everyone loves loons, they'll come hop, skipping, and jumping with open water. There are fewer being seen in Madison area already, southern Wisconsin. They'll make it to the Wisconsin River, which is open right now, sometime in the next few weeks. And then what they'll do is they'll fly out every day and scout their territorial lake. They'll come back to the same lake every year. And that's why they show up the day that the ice goes out, because they've been coming every day, checking it out.
I love that
And
so
they know when.
Nature is so cool.
I know. Hey,
Thank
loons
you.
out there, come on. We got room for you. Make your way up north. Thank you so much, John. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow on Up North.